Mercy is rarely remembered on the battlefield. Wars grind compassion into dust, replacing it with orders, with tactics, with blood. Yet sometimes, one small act survives the chaos, a decision no one else would have made, that echoes far beyond the moment. That kind of mercy can change the fate of entire civilizations. Please like, subscribe for epic tales. Let's continue. The raid on Karen's belt was not meant to be complicated. A unit of Terran Marines had been dispatched to intercept reports of slave traders operating on the fringes of neutral space. The belt was lawless, a ragged cluster of asteroids where smugglers and raiders thrived in the shadows of fractured rock. Humanity had little stake in the region, except for a promise. The Terran Accord had sworn that no human soldier would stand idle while sentient beings were bought and sold. That oath carried weight, and so a squad of 12 Marines under Lieutenant Marcus Hale was sent to investigate. The firefight was short, brutal, and unremarkable. Traders armed with black market plasma rifles folded quickly under disciplined Terran gunfire. In the smoke-filled caverns of the belt, screams echoed as slavers fled or fell. Hale moved quickly through the chaos, pulse rifle raised, his armor plates scorched from grazing hits. He wasn't supposed to go deeper into the compound alone, but something drove him, something that wasn't in the orders. A sound. Not the bark of weapons, not the roar of fire. Something small, fragile, the sound of a child sobbing. He followed it into a steel cage built into the rock. Inside, shackled to the wall, was a girl. She was not human. Her skin shimmered pale blue in the emergency lights, her eyes vast and reflective like liquid silver. She was young, barely more than a child by human standards, yet the scars of captivity were fresh across her wrists and ankles. The slavers hadn't been gentle. The girl shrank back when Hale appeared, pressing herself against the wall as though expecting pain. He froze, lowering his weapon. His orders were clear: secure the compound, call for evac, leave identification of rescued captives to Central Command. But orders didn't cover this. No soldier was coming for her. It had to be him. "Easy," Hale whispered, voice softened against the ringing in his comms. "You're safe now." The girl didn't understand his words, but she understood his tone. When he cut the shackles with his combat knife, she didn't run. When he lifted her, cradling her against his armor, she clung to him with trembling arms. Back at the dropship, his squad stared at him. "Lieutenant, we can't drag an alien kid into Terran custody," one Marine muttered. "Command'll send her to some holding facility. Then she'll disappear," Hale shot back. His jaw tightened. "Not on my watch." No report ever recorded what happened after, but Hale smuggled her out. In the chaos of the belt's liberation, she was placed on a neutral transport bound for unknown space. He gave her food, water, a blanket, everything he could before she slipped from his life as silently as she had entered it. He never even knew her name. 20 years passed. The galaxy did what it always does. Wars rose and fell. Empires burned, coalitions formed. Humanity carved its place among the stars, sometimes diplomat, sometimes warrior, always restless. Marcus Hale aged like every soldier does, with scars you could see and more you couldn't. By the time he wore an admiral's uniform, few remembered the raid on Karen's belt. Fewer still remembered the nameless alien girl hidden in the shadows of that rock. But she remembered. The summit of Avaris Prime was destined to fail. It was the first meeting between the Terran Accord and the Aelvari Dominion, an empire of elegance and cruelty in equal measure. The Dominion ruled star systems with artistry that disguised their iron grip. To most humans, they were untouchable. When the Dominion agreed to negotiations, the galaxy buzzed. Every species watched as Terran diplomats stepped into the crystalline halls of the Aelvari Spire, waiting for the inevitable humiliation. The Aelvari didn't treat with equals, they made vassals, Admiral Hale was among the military entourage, standing in dress uniform, his hair streaked with gray. He'd seen too many summits like this end in disaster. He expected the Dominion's queen to arrive with arrogance, perhaps veiled threats, and leave humanity cornered. Instead, when the chamber doors parted, silence followed. She was radiant, cloaked in woven starlight, her crown a lattice of living crystal. The Aelvari bowed as one, their voices whispering titles of reverence. The queen of the Dominion had arrived. Her eyes swept the chamber, silver and reflective, just as he remembered. Marcus Hale felt the breath leave his chest. It was her, the girl from Karen's belt. The child he had carried in his arms 20 years ago now stood as sovereign of one of the most feared powers in the galaxy. She paused mid-step, her gaze locking onto him. The diplomats fidgeted, murmuring in confusion as the queen broke protocol. She walked directly to him. "You," she said, not in Aelvari, but in perfect Terran standard. Her voice rang with memory. "Do you remember me?" The chamber froze. Admiral Hale swallowed hard. His mind screamed of protocol, of silence, of the risk of undoing the entire summit with one word. Yet he couldn't deny her. "Yes," he whispered. The queen of the Aelvari smiled. What followed would be retold for generations. The negotiations never became threats. They became stories. Her story. She told her court how a human soldier had found her in chains and chosen compassion over duty. She told them that mercy, not conquest, had saved her life. And in return, she vowed to honor that mercy. The Dominion would not make vassals of humanity. They would stand as partners, allies. Hale sat in silence, overwhelmed, as centuries of hostility shifted in a single day. Not because of fleets or weapons, not because of politics, because 20 years earlier he had listened to a child's sobs in the dark. The alliance that followed reshaped the galaxy. Together, humanity and the Aelvari curbed slave empires, dismantled raider guilds, and stabilized trade in sectors that had known only blood. Where once Hale had carried a girl from a cage, now her fleets carried banners beside his. And when the human admiral finally laid down his uniform years later, the queen herself honored him, not as soldier, not as politician, but as the man who had shown her mercy when no one else would. Mercy rarely makes the history books. It doesn't carry the glory of battles won or empires built. Yet sometimes one act of compassion shapes more than war ever could. A single human decision in the dark of Karen's belt echoed for decades, and a queen never forgot. If this story moved you, subscribe, share it, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your voice keeps these stories alive.